When we look back on the early 1990s, after a very tumultuous, quite a number of entertainers stand out, and we're going to talk a little bit about one of the most controversial of that generation, Andrew Dice Clay, better known as the Dice Man, better known as his unofficial nickname, the Controversy. Now, for the uninitiated, which is the majority of people under the age of 40, Um, Andrew Dice Clay is best known as an American stand-up actor, musician, and producer. Um, he created a character that was kind of an amalgam of all the Italian Guido stereotypes of the late 80s or the 90s. Sort of a combination of Elvis, John Travolta, Pacino, De Niro, Stallone, Eric Roberts, all that kind of New Yorkies type stuff. Um, he rose to prominence and became, at one point, arguably the most successful comedian of his era. He became the first stand-up to sell out Madison Square Garden for two consecutive nights. And in that same year, he played the lead role in a movie that had a lot of plug but went nowhere. The kind of comedy film noir, The Adventures of Ford Fairlane. Since his rise to prominence back in the 80s and 90s, he's basically consistent in several genres, and he became kind of a more well-known character actor in recent years, including some people believe should have been Academy Award nominated parts in Woody Allen's Blue Jasmine in 2013, and Bradley Cooper's director debut, A Star Is Born, where he played Lady Gaga's father. He's also getting big on the podcast scene with his own podcast, Amola Haya here now. I can't pronounce it correctly, but it's quite interesting. I've listened to it before. Now, 2020 marks his 42nd year in the industry. Now, born from a Jewish family, Jacqueline and Fred Silverstein in the Sheepshead neighborhood of Brooklyn. Um, uh, his father was a boxer and a real estate agent, which is kind of a cliche for someone growing up Jewish because usually Jewish people are either athletes or in real estate or money. Now he had the acting bug at a young age because arguably he started at age 5 doing impressions. By age 7, he's playing drums, and he also was a drummer on the Catskill circuit in the 70s when he played at bar mitzvahs and weddings under the name Clay Silvers. Um, he was hoping to form a big band of his own when he came back, decided to go to college, but didn't work out, and he thought, hey, he's got enough of a personality, maybe try something in stand-up. Now, his stand-up career started in 1978 when he auditioned at something called the Pips Coffee Lounge in Sheepshead Bay, which quickly turned to a headline act. Now, the character of the Dice Man was part of a series of impressions, similar to what Jim Carrey used to do back then. Jim Carrey was primarily a multi-impressionist in stand-up set. But he created a character called the Dice Man, was based on the Jerry Lewis version of Buddy Love from the Nutty Professor, not the sexualized Eddie Murphy Nutty Professor, Buddy Love, but more of the kind of obscene a little bit, and kind of low IQ. Now, part of the gag was he would start off with that Buddy Love time character. When the lights would go out, he would go into like a John Travolta riff. Now, because his act was getting very popular, he graduated to larger, more prestigious comedy venues, including the Improv, Catch a Rising Star, and Dangerfields. Now, when he was at Dangerfields, he got recognition by Rodney, and Rodney helped boost his career a little bit, as well as Mitzi Shore from the Comedy Store, who had him on kind of as a late night addition um, for a person to encourage him to wing it. And he continued the fine tune his performance as a Dice Man. You see, at the time he was working as an actor on the side, and a lot of the MASH fans remember him from a very, very late episode of the series where he played an injured soldier. He played a kind of a modified version of the Dice Man. And of all things, Pretty in Pink, the John Cryer, Molly Ringwald romantic comedy, where he played kind of a bouncer that was trying to give advice to Crier's Ducky character to try to get Molly Ringwald's character to kind of to fall in love with him or to see the love he had for her. So we saw him as a kind of a background character. And don't forget, he also appeared in a very, very big cult comedy called Night Patrol. But of all people, the unknown comic. He played J.P. Morgan's kind of himbo boy toy in the movie. So we were seeing the different stuff and saying, he's a handsome guy. It seems like he's showing up a lot. And sure enough, in 1988, after almost a decade in the business, on and off doing different stuff, he got a big break by performing at an all-male Brick Butter Association dinner event that had numerous Hollywood royalty. Now, the set was a big hit with those in attendance, and the next day, 20th Century Fox approached him for a film deal, and he entered talks with Joel Silver as well for future projects. In 1988, he had an infamous 7-minute set at Dangerfield in New York City for a stand-up showcase that Ronnie Dangerfield had put him together for HBO, and that brought him on to heavy, heavy prominence. So he's starting to tour the small circuit, the big circuit, with the Diceman character, and they're seeing more and more positive reactions from the crowd, even though the comedy was very sexist, was very one-sided, and very kind of women, or like a Guido who's playing this type of character. But it seemed to appeal to the people in the audience because the men love these acts, and the women like these looks, so they were kind of forgiven. Imagine if John Travolta would be on stage cursing and making bad jokes, kind of like a Richard Pryor style. But I saw him, I think, on that HBO special, and I said, well, what's that? He's just playing a character. You can't really take it seriously. How far can you go with such a character? And sure enough, he went a long way. By 1989, he was named Comedy Actor of the Year by readers of Performance Magazine. His first comedy album or performance album came in March '89, which sold 500,000 copies in the States, which is gold status. Was top 90 on the Billboard charts. But because MTV took a notice of him, they brought him on knowing full well what his routine was like. A lot of sexist jokes, the famous, nursery rhyme where he's taking normal nursery rhymes and kind of turning it, restricted or X-rated. MTV knew what they were getting, and he gave them what exactly they wanted, and they decided to ban him from the network. The 3-minute set is still available on YouTube. Pretty well for Diceman. He's not really instigating the crowd. He's just playing the same character he was playing for a while. But because late 80s, early 90s in the States, there was more like the heavy metal kind of performance style for music, for stand-up or whatever. It was a risky time because, there was more censorship going on after PMRC. People wanted to censor Andrew Dice Clay, even though he's playing a character. But the people that support him, they were kind of pushing back and forth. Now, the second album he did was a improvised set at Dangerfield, released on Geffen. It reached 40 on the Billboard charts, selling 250,000 copies. So the momentum from 88, 89 is building. By February 1990, he's at Madison Square Garden, sold out 2 consecutive nights with 38,000 people. Of course, as it was the akin at the time, Saturday Night Live took notice, and despite the fact the heavy controversy against Andrew Dice Clay was out there, he agreed to perform. And the performance itself on the show was more an extended parody of the Diceman, because he had kind of It's a Wonderful Life type of skit at the first, involving the devil of all people, played by the incomparable John Lovitz. But in this show, it was a double whammy because no conflict of interest here. Lauren and Michael's girlfriend at the time, who was a cast member, Nora Dunn, decided to not appear in the episode. And 2 days later, musical guest Sinead O'Connor, a known feminist who was going through mental health issues at the time, got very dramatic and said she wasn't going to appear in the show in protest. Now, by the time The Adventures of Ford Fairlane came out, he was getting protesters for his concert films. He was getting boycotted and picketed, and by August 1981, an infamous Symphony Hall event in Salt Lake City, he was met outside by angry protesters over material when, of all things, the police were called. Now, in 1993, ABC was going to look at having Dice Clay in a 1 hour dramatic series because the dramatic chops were still good, and ABC decided to not only ban him from the show, he kept him locked in contracts. You couldn't work with any other network because of the 1 year contract. Said there was a moral clause that stopped him from going to any other network. Um, Now, by 1993, he was doing shows on pay-per-view. And he had 250,000 hits to become the highest-grossing non-sports pay event of that year. Another pay-per-view special, the Valentine's Day Massacre, had continued in 1994, but the bloom was off the rose. 100,000 hits, not as big. But it just seemed by the mid 90s, these type of comedy, and the fact is, the pro-feminism movement, which led to the second wave of the feminist movement across North American entertainment in the late 90s, early 2000s, with Sarah McLachlan or Concert 2 and all that. People were people were trying to get away from edgy comedy. But you got to understand at this time, Kinnison was pretty well dead. Bill Hicks was dead. This type of comedy was being frowned more upon. Family comedy. See, everything in Hollywood ebbs and flows. You had Lenny Bruce and George Carlin. It was big for a while. Richard Pryor was big for a while, but they kind of they were turned against. You can only last so long with this type of comedy. And although Andrew Dice Clay has remained, consistent in his entertainment pursuits, he's never had the great success between that 89 and 88, 89, 92, because there was one group of people basically said he was too sexist for TV. Other people would support him, thinking he was exactly the way that character was, the Diceman, which he wasn't. So they had some very much confusion. On a personal note, I like these comedies, but the fact is, I knew it was just part time because I seen him in Night Patrol, I seen him in Pretty in Pink, I seen him on Amazon Women on the Moon, I seen him on MASH, and I knew he was just playing a character. It's like Red Buttons. That's the only comparison I do. Red Buttons would do the same boring skit every time, like Never Got a Dinner. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. And I'm not saying comparing Red Buttons, an Oscar winner, to Andrew Dice Clay, but when you're a Borscht Belt comedian or performer, you only have your flair out. Like even an unknown comic, like he's been consistently funny over the years, but it's the same skit all the time. And with Andrew Dice Clay, it was the same skit, but you only hear the unknown comic saying, or blanks were so big, you didn't have to dust the floor because it picked up the dirt. I mean, some women, of course, are going to be offended by that. He didn't really matter because I wasn't writing his material. I like Kids in the Hall. I like Sam Kinison. I didn't like Bill Cosby. I got in trouble over that. Bill Cosby, I knew he was a criminal from justice. I like Family Matters, but I mean, I didn't like Full House. So that, sue me. I mean, everybody has their different loves. But you see, I like what Andrew Dice Clay was the crowd. The crowd was just intense. It was like watching a Morton Downey Jr. talk show. If you never heard of Morton Downey Jr., look it up. Look it up. It was like psychotic New York talk show, late night talk show at its worst. But the Kinnison crowd was worse than Andrew Dice Clay because Kinnison was more intellectual, and that's scary when you have an intellectual guy in the stage, intellectuals in the crowd, and they're agreeing on something. Andrew Dice Clay was appealing to those guidos. But everything you see since then, like Jersey Shore and all the John Travolta tribute actors through the years, or like the pretend stupid, nice-looking Italian or Greek American or whatever. He was a cliche, but he ran all the way to the bank. But I must tell you this: I've always appreciated Andrew Dice Clay's dramatic parts in Police Story and Blue Jasmine, and because he could play Dice Clay better than anybody. And it was kind of weird. He was on a certain roast, I forget who it was, and he was asked to play Dice Man again, and he said no. He was appeared on The Apprentice, and I think Donald Trump thought he was going to play the Dice Man, and he comes across as, just like any other entertainers. He created a character that got out of control, just like Buddy Love, just like the unknown comic. I mean, do we all know how many good dramatic roles Murray Langston has done, or comedy roles? No, we just know him as the unknown comic. So it's the way it goes. Ladies and gentlemen, Will Smith at one point was known as a comedy actor. He wasn't known as a dramatic actor. Sometimes we get pigeonholed anyway. So if you have a chance, and not easily offended, you want to check out some of Andrew Dice Clay's routines that are on YouTube. I wouldn't expect it for everybody, but it is what it is. It's of its time. It's a time capsule. But if you see him, see the generation like you saw Andrew Dice Clay and the height of his popularity, and to see him in Woody Allen movies and Lady Gaga movies is very jarring because you're saying, I thought this guy'd be dead by now because we still confuse the Diceman character with the real, Andrew Clay. You know, we always do. So on this COVID Easter weekend, we wish everybody a nice weekend. Stay safe. I'm having some trouble understanding why people have trouble staying at home. If you're paid to stay home, if you have no place to go, wait for spring to come. Do your garden. Be safe. Just a few more weeks. I don't think New Brunswick is going to be as hard off as our friends in the States by the time May comes about because there's only 750,000 people in New Brunswick and most of us are rural. I just feel sad for the nursing homes throughout Quebec and Ontario and out west that don't have the quality nursing homes we do have in New Brunswick. I'm thinking of the Darlington Manoir of Home and a few others. We have some good nursing homes in this province, and I'm just hoping that people can get through this and as much lack of fatalities as possible because it could be a long summer in the states. I can see a million people dying in the states this summer unless this is in the bud because once the warm weather comes and the respirators in the big cities run out, or it's going to be rough. Maybe Canada and different countries in the world can help the states. I hope so, because they've helped us out in the past, as we all know. So, hope to find you well. Have a good day.